Hi guys, Cliff Olson, Doctor of Audiology and founder of Applied Hearing Solutions in Phoenix, Arizona. And in this video, I'm talking about Consumer Reports rankings for best and worst hearing aid retailers. Coming up. Every once in a while, Consumer Reports gets around to releasing their survey data of best and worst hearing aid brands and best and worst hearing aid retailers. I have personally been a subscriber of Consumer Reports for the past 4 years, and I use them every single time I'm going to make a major appliance purchase or vehicle purchase. Naturally, being a subscriber and audiologist myself, I do find it particularly interesting to find out who Consumer Reports finds to be a really good hearing aid retailer and a not so good retailer, even though I still think it's a much better idea to find the best hearing care professional to optimize the performance of whatever hearing aids you get. That being said, every single time that Consumer Reports releases their survey data, I am bombarded by questions from individuals who are confused by the rankings and who want answers. So I went ahead and took a look at who Consumer Reports subscribers felt were the best and worst hearing aid retailers as of 2021. But before I get into my thoughts, if you could do me a huge favor and click the like button, it really helps out my channel. And while you're at it, if you have not yet hit that subscribe button with notification bell, go ahead and do that as well, because that ensures that you never miss one of my newly released videos, and I release multiple new videos every single week. That being said, I really appreciate it. Now let's go ahead and get into these rankings of the best and worst hearing aid retailers. Just to make sure that we're all on the same page here, Consumer Reports typically releases multiple sets of survey data, one for ranking the best and worst hearing aid retailers, and one for ranking the best and worst hearing aid brands. So if you want to see my brand video, I will have that video linked down in the description, but for this video, we're going to talk about the different retailers. Also, I do own and operate a private practice clinic on the north side of Phoenix that does dispense hearing aids. So technically speaking, every single one of the retailers on this list is a competitor of mine, so I'm going to do my best to remain as unbiased as possible. According to Consumer Reports, these rankings are based on a survey completed in the winter of 2021 by 9,407 Consumer Reports members. The overall satisfaction score represents overall satisfaction with the prescription hearing aid retailer and is not exclusively determined by factors under the survey results. An overall satisfaction score of 100 would mean that all respondents are completely satisfied, 80 would indicate that respondents are very satisfied, and 60 would indicate that respondents are somewhat satisfied on average. Differences of less than 2 points are not meaningful. And ratings are based on Consumer Reports members who may not be representative of the general US population. Based on the information that Consumer Reports made available to subscribers, retailers were primarily ranked based on 10 categories. Each of these categories were ranked on a Likert scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being excellent and 1 being very poor. 10 different retail chains were included in this survey data, and like I mentioned before, the top score possible is 100. Coming in at the bottom of the list with a tie score of 76 was between 4 different hearing aid retail chains, which included Starkey Store, Beltone, Miracle Ear, and Hear USA. To be honest, I'm not really sure what a Starkey Store is, but I presume that it's a store that sells primarily Starkey hearing aids, or may even be a store that's owned by Starkey. Beltone and Miracle Ear are chains that sell rebranded and locked Resound hearing aids and Signia hearing aids respectively. Hear USA is actually owned by the Savantos Group that also owns the Signia and Rexton hearing aid brands. Next, with the score of 77, which by the way was not considered significantly better than a score of 76 because it is not at least 2 points higher, was Audibel. Now, I don't want to confuse you here, but Audibel is very similar to Starkey. A lot of the Audibel clinics will primarily sell Starkey hearing aids, even though there is some level of autonomy because they are owned by individuals, so they can technically sell you other than Starkey hearing aids, which may be why they actually came out just a little bit ahead of Starkey stores. Next, with the score of 78, was True Hearing. Now, this confuses me a little bit because True Hearing is not technically a hearing aid retailer. They are a third-party managed care group that basically contracts with insurance to get their members lower cost hearing devices. Other than me being surprised that they made the list at all, I'm really surprised that they came out ahead of some of the other retailers that I already mentioned. Next, with a score of 79, we have Sam's Club. Out of all of the rankings on this list, this is the one that probably surprises me the most because Sam's Club only sells one brand of hearing aids called Liberty that is not even manufactured by one of the major hearing aid brands. Not to mention, several years back, they closed a bunch of Sam's Club locations which restricted the follow-up care for likely thousands of their hearing aid users, and somehow they managed to maintain a decent ranking on this survey. It just shows you how quickly we all forget when someone screws us over. Next, with a score of 81, we have Hearing Life, which is a retail chain that is owned by the Demont Group. The Demont Group also owns the hearing aid brands Oticon and Sonix. When you check out a Hearing Life website, it's no surprise that you're going to see one of these two brands on there, which basically means that these are one of the hearing aids that you're going to get if you go into one of those clinics. Next, with a score of 83, you have Connect Hearing, which are the retail locations of Sonova, who owns the Phonak and Audio Nova hearing aid brands. And naturally, if you have a hearing aid retail chain that is owned by a hearing aid manufacturer, it is a high probability that you're going to get that particular hearing aid brand when you go into their store. And the hearing aid retailer that was ranked at the top of the list with a score of 88 was Costco. Now, if you are familiar with Consumer Reports, then you will not be surprised that Costco made the top of the list again. There are three things that are guaranteed in life: death, taxes, and Consumer Reports members love Costco. My gut tells me that the reason that Costco usually comes out at the top of these Consumer Reports rankings is that they are always focused on getting you the lowest cost of hearing aids humanly possible. So if low price is what is truly most important to you, then Costco really is a pretty good option. If you do decide to trust Costco with your hearing healthcare, just make sure that you do your due diligence before you end up going in. I have published several videos on getting hearing aids at Costco, and I will link those videos in the description. As for my thoughts on these Consumer Reports rankings, I have to say that I really do appreciate that Consumer Reports has come out with survey data ranking these different hearing aid retailers. The downside is there is a whole world of hearing aid clinics out there that are not retail chains that you can receive excellent hearing health care from because their main focus is treating hearing loss, not just selling hearing aids. Now, I am a little bit biased about this, like I mentioned before, but private practices are typically the ones that will optimize your treatment outcomes by following best practices rather than just trying to maximize hearing aid sales. Now, if you are not familiar with what best practices are, I highly recommend that you check out that video that I will link in the description, because best practices are the only way to ensure that you receive the maximum amount of benefit from your hearing aids. However, it would be nearly impossible to collect survey data from each one of these independently owned private practice clinics, and even if you did, you couldn't take that information and generalize it to the entire population. According to Consumer Reports themselves, even though they have a massive sample size of over 9,000 respondents on this survey, the results may not be representative of the US population as a whole, so you cannot make any inferences or generalizations based off of this data. I would have also really liked to see a little bit more objective data inside of these surveys, like how much time was actually spent with a patient, how many options were given to a patient, and ultimately how many best practice protocols were really followed. I also found some of the survey items to be relatively ambiguous. Let's take pricing plan options for instance. There are typically 6 different ways that you can price hearing aids. You have bundled, unbundled, hybrid, renting, leasing, and financing. Let's go ahead and take Costco, for instance, that came out at the top of this list. They scored a 5 out of 5 for pricing plan options, yet they only sell their hearing aids in a bundled model of care. There's no way that you can finance them. There's no way that you can separate the cost of the devices from the care that you receive. They only have 1 of the 6, and yet they still ranked a 5 out of 5. In my opinion, in order to get 5 out of 5 on this scale, you should have to offer all 6, and just so you know, my clinic would not score 5 out of 5 because we do not offer all 6 of these options either. Overall, I like that Consumer Reports is trying to increase the transparency inside of the hearing aid market, and I think that the more information that you have to work with, the better. However, I also believe that Consumer Reports should only be one of many pieces of information that you use to determine where you're going to go to treat your hearing loss. So do yourself a favor, continue to do your due diligence and use multiple sources of information before you ultimately decide where to go to treat your hearing loss. That's it for this video. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section below. If you liked the video, please share it. And if you want to see other videos just like this one, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, feel free to check out my website, drcliffaud.com.